Right, let's look at the Boston Consulting Group matrix now. So it's to be applied to an organization's product portfolio. We're looking at market growth as a whole, so the whole market, and we want to look at relative market share, and the key word there is relative market share. So we're going to be looking at your market share versus your closest competitor. So that helps to determine the market potential, the ability to grow profits and cash flows, a suitable strategy for the product, so hold, invest, or divest. So our 4 categories, we've got dog, question mark, star, and cash cow. So it's going to help us with our SWOT analysis. In fact, a way that I would think about the SWOT analysis, and not many people think about it this way. People think of the SWOT analysis as like an assessment or analysis in its own right. It's not really. It should be used as a summary. So far we have looked at the 5 forces and pest, and those would tell us about the opportunities and threats. So we can feed that in to the SWOT analysis, and that would help us fill in those 2 boxes in there. And then the Boston Consulting Group matrix, that could help us with our strengths and weaknesses. So product portfolio, is our product portfolio good or bad? So that if we have a good spread across these 4 sections, it's good. If we're concentrated in just one of them, it's not going to be good. It's going to be a weakness. Okay, so this is how you would map it out. Let's show it there. So you can see if I have low market growth and low relative market share, then I've got a dog. If I have low relative market share and high market growth, looking at the bottom left there, we have a question mark. Question marks, the best way to think about these are they're your future products, right? So at the moment you don't know what's going to happen. So they could take off and go really, really well, or the high market growth may never materialize and it might drop down to being a dog. So then next, if we go to the right, so we're looking at the bottom right now, we hope that our question marks turn into stars, and this is where we have a high market growth, so there's loads of new customers coming in, and we have a relatively high market share. So in fact we're the market leader because we're looking at relative market share, so it's us versus our closest competitor, so we're ahead of the pack. And then the stars will, if you think about the product life cycle, if you remember that one, you have the growth phase, you've got loads of new customers coming in, and eventually you hit the maturity phase, and that's when the market becomes saturated. So there's just no new customers coming in, or very few new customers. You're hitting kind of a low growth rate at that point. And our stars will fall to become cash cows. And so we have high relative market share with the market leader. There's not much growth in the market, and you can see that it's very profitable. So we call them our cash cows. And then eventually, according to the product life cycle, again, all products will get replaced, and that's basically what happens. Our cash cows get replaced and they become dogs. So now we've got low market share in a low growth market. Our product's being replaced by something better. So that's how you use the Boston Consulting Group matrix. I would say in a similar way with the other models, in advanced performance management, they might actually have already done a Boston Consulting Group matrix analysis for you. And your job is basically to come up with a way of measuring if this is still a dog or still a question mark or still a cash cow. So I will suggest a couple of measures under each heading for you. So you've got your question mark there. That's your new product. So let's see. It says currently loss making. Investment, it might become a star. Either take the risk and invest or divest, right? So the question marks, I would be looking at your research and development spending. That would be something I would monitor to make sure we're spending enough, and not too much, so we have a budget on our question marks. And I'd also be looking at like the new features that are being added, or the patents that are being filed for my question marks. Those will be things that will tell me about the performance of the question mark team, if you like. And then the star, okay, so now we've got our product kind of firmed up and it's really popular, everybody likes it. well, now I'd be looking at my marketing spend rather than my research and development spend, because I want to be spending money winning those new customers that are joining the market. And I would also be looking at the market growth, because I want to know when my star stops to being drops from being a star to being a cash cow, because I'm going to change my strategy at that point. So those would be the two things I would measure. And then cash cow, so I'm going to measure, it says a very profitable, high cash inflow, so high cash generated for it, maintain and protect the position, replace at the end of its economic life. So cash cow, I would be looking at profitability. You could get specific and say gross profitability. Excuse me. Because the higher the gross profit, the more that I'm generating from my cash cow. And I would also keep an eye on market share, because what I want to know is when my cash cow goes from being a cash cow to being a dog, because again I'm going to change my strategy at that point. So I think it's okay to use the obvious measures here, market share and market growth. You just want to be able to explain why you're measuring that particular thing for that particular heading. And then dogs are usually not always loss-making, so divest. Hold if the strategic purpose, so it complements another product or it's still profitable. So dog, I guess I would be looking at contribution now rather than say profitability, because profitability might factor in some fixed costs, and I just want to make sure that if I sell these dog products, they're making some positive contribution towards everything else. So contribution rather than profit for me when I'm looking at dogs. And I guess the other thing that would be interesting to know is the impact of divesting could be something else I could measure. So potential lost sales of other products, or what would someone pay me to take over the license to make this product. That would be something I could measure. But I think that's a key thing where it says, you have to consider divesting a dog, but it's not an automatic decision, because there might be other products that rely on it. This always makes me think of Apple TV. So it's quite popular now, but it got launched probably like 2 decades ago. It's been around for absolute ages. In the first decade, it didn't really do very well at all. It almost went from a question mark straight to a dog. But Apple never got rid of it. And the reason they never got rid of it is because the people who had it subscribed to iTunes, and Apple made good money from iTunes. So if they stopped doing the Apple TV, they would have lost those customers, and they would have also lost the iTunes subscriptions. So it's just something to keep in mind. So BCG questions for strategic planning. So are cash cows generating enough funds for investing? How long will this continue? Is the market still mature or declining? When should we stop investing? What products will replace it, right? So when you're coming up with measures that help answer those questions are very, very useful. The star, so how can they be converted to future cash cows? Is the market share stable, right? So when the star drops to being a cash cow, will it drop to being a cash cow, or will we lose market share and it ends up being a dog? How effective is the investment strategy? So how many out of every new customer entering the market, what's our chances of winning them? So we'll say 10 new customers come in. How many of those 10 customers are we going to win? Question mark. So what is the risk appetite? So how wacky are we willing to go with our new products? How does it align with the strategic mission or objectives? So Apple were talking about launching a credit card at one point. And I thought, I'd give that a go if Apple did it, but it doesn't really fit with the Apple. I think it would have ended up diluting their brand, probably. They're a technology company, and so if they start going into finance, then they might lose some of their credibility. Impact of the external environment on the question mark. So maybe we just have to do this. Artificial intelligence is going to be a question mark for loads of different companies, but if everyone else is doing it. What role do dog products play? So is it profitable? Does it complement a product range? Does it serve a market niche? So we've got some die-hard customers in it that just want to keep buying and buying it? Does it act as a gateway product to bring customers to the organization? That's a good one. Is the benefit still sufficient, or should it be divested? So these are all things that you could potentially come up with measures to help you answer these questions. Okay, so we're going to have a go at a question. So we've got the tea company makes 4 products, each of which operates in a different market, and the following information is available. So you've got product 1, 2, 3, 4 down the left-hand side there, and you have tea's revenue and the market sector revenue, and you've got that for 20x2, or I think about this as 2022, all the way through to 20x5 or 2025. So classify each of the tea products using the Boston Consulting Group matrix. The market percentage share for the largest competitors are P1 has 10%, so that's product 1. Product 2 has 5, product 3 has 4%, and product 3 has 4%, and product 4 has 2%. Okay, so you might want to pause the recording and have a go at this. Just before you do, when we talk about high versus low market growth, the cutoff is about 10%, right? So if it's more than 10%, it's high. If it's less than 10%, it's low. And then if you have higher market share than your competitor, then you have high market share. If you have lower market share than your competitor, you have low market share. Okay, so pause the recording and have a go. Okay, so hopefully you've had a go. Let's come and review the answer. So you can see here I've got market growth for product 1 of 6.89%, product 2 is 0.61%, product 3 is 9.5%, product 4 is actually negative 2.7%, 2.76%. Tea market share to 22.39%, product 2 is 0.51%, product 3 is 1.01%, product 4 is 3.48%. So largest competitor is 10, 5, 4, 2. So our relative market share, if we take our market share and divide it by our largest competitors, so 22.39 divided by 10 gets me 2.4. We've got 0.51%, so 0.5%, and they've got 5, so we've got 0.1, 0.25, 1.74. Okay, so let's look at our classification now. So product 1, you've got a high market growth and high market share. So I generally find in the exam they use 10% as the benchmark. In this question, we need 1 in each box, and that will probably be what happens in the exam. There'll be 3 or 4 divisions in the exam, and you'll have to classify those 3 or 4, and they don't tend to all be in the same box. They tend to be spread out. So for this one, we'd have to judge relative to the other products whether it's high or not. So yeah, 7% and 9. Product 1, product 3, they're the high growth ones. Product 2 and product 4, they're obviously the low growth ones. So that's why it's saying high growth, high market share. Yep, absolutely, much more than double what our closest competitor has. So we're a star. So we should hold or build on product 1. Product 2 then, so low market growth, so less than 1%, and low market share, so only 10% of the of what our closest competitor has. So that's our dog. So divest or consider holding if it's complementary to our product range. Product 3, so 9.51, so relative to everything else, that's high. Low market share, so I've only got 0.25%, 0.25 of the compared to my large competitor. So then we're looking at the question mark. So that one, we want to keep investing in our question mark. Depending on if the market starts to shrink or the market growth drops, we might want to think about stopping it. Maybe it's not a good investment. And then product 4, low or negative growth, and then high market share, because we've got 1.74, So we've got almost double what our closest competitor has. So that's our cash cow. So you can see they tend to do that where there's going to be one for each section. So market growth is the average growth over the 3 years. It will be a computer-based exam, so you can do this in Excel. There's a function there of RRI, and so that's going to be the quick shortcut to get the average growth. Relative market share is the most recent market share divided by the largest or nearest competitor. So that's something to watch out for, where you don't necessarily want to use the average market share. Again, you want to use the latest one if that's what you've been given. Within your answers, ensure that you make it clear to your marker as to whether MG and MS are high or low. Yeah, so don't sit on the fence with this. Make sure that you actually state whether they're high or low. Right, let's have a look at some of the strategic planning models that we might be asked to use. So we're going to be covering the SWOT analysis, Porter's 5 forces, Pestel, BCG matrix, one of my favorites, Porter's generic strategies, and that's it. So we'll run through each of those models in turn. SWOT analysis. So what's the point? So identifies key internal and external factors that impact your business strategy. So I do find they can be a little bit picky about internal versus external. So strengths and weaknesses are internal, right? So if you have good customer service, if you have a high quality product, these are all internal things. Opportunities and threats are external, because it's not a very technical model. So in terms of scoring your theory marks, that's how you're going to do it. So you make it clear that you know strengths and weaknesses are internal, opportunities and threats are external, and that's the bit they can be a bit funny about. In terms of how will this be used, so identify core competencies and capabilities of an organization. When you see the word core, then that means that the things that are giving us our competitive advantage. So this makes me think of Nike. So Nike, if you think about it, actually it's quite a small organization for considering it's such a big brand. So what's the core competence of Nike? Because they don't actually make any of the shoes, so manufacturing isn't a core competence. They're really good at designing shoes and clothes, and they're really good at marketing themselves as well and creating a brand. So those are their core competencies. Analysis of the external environment, so anything out there that could help us, opportunities, anything out there that could hurt us, are threats. So strengths and weaknesses, internal, right? So make sure you make it clear we're looking at internal. So here's some examples there of what could come up. So we mentioned quality of product. Brand would be an internal one as well. So that shows how good you are at marketing. The skills and experience of your staff, the amount of money you've got available, your relationship with the suppliers, that sort of thing. Opportunities and threats. So from the environment, what do we have? Laws and regulations would be something that could, normally we think of them as threats. And then possibly we've got technological development. I guess that would be an opportunity. At the moment, we've got artificial intelligence on the horizon. So that's a potential opportunity for many organizations. And energy costs or interest rates. So energy's become much more expensive than it was before, double the cost, and interest rates are really high at the moment. So those will all be threats. And so a really good strategy should leverage our strengths, mitigate our weaknesses, take advantage of opportunities, and reduce threats or avoid threats. Right, so being aware of all four of these things allows us to come up with a better strategy. So SWOT and strategic management accounting. So we've got sales, costs and profit margins, staff turnover rates, capital investment, R&D, market growth and market share, investment in staff training days, those sort of things. So those would be potential measures we could have a look at to understand our strengths and weaknesses. Now, just in terms of the exam, it's much more likely that you'll be given a SWOT and asked how will this impact the performance management. So for example, like if you know that research and development is an area of weakness, we don't have any new products coming out, then you might want to come up with some KPIs, some measures that look at your research and development. So how much they're spending, how many projects are seen to fruition, how many are completed on time, how many patents they're able to register each year. So this is the way you would use the SWOT in the Advanced Performance Management exam. So information provision. So management accounting systems are a key source of quantified data, such as the example given there. Comparison of data against historical results or industry average can be used to identify SWOT factors. So what it's talking about there, comparison, we can do a bit of benchmarking. So it's like staff turnover rates. That's a good example of something we could measure to tell us how happy and motivated our staff are. So if we have a high staff turnover rate, then they're probably not very happy. If we have a low staff turnover rate, then theoretically it should be happier. Now, how do we know what is high or low? Like if I say I've got a staff turnover rate of 5%, which basically means that 5% of my staff leave each year and have to be replaced, is that good or is that bad? Now, it probably would depend on the industry. I mean, I've worked in a call center in the past, if you guys have ever done that, and it was really hard work, and I think I lasted 2 weeks. So I imagine in a call center, or certain like in pubs and clubs and things like that, they probably have quite a high staff turnover rate, but it's not too bad because it's quite easy to train someone how to do the phone call or serve someone at the bar. So I'd expect them to have quite high. So maybe 5% would actually be really good in that industry. But like an accounting firm, accountants, we tend to be kind of risk averse. And so I wouldn't expect us to change jobs unless we really, really weren't happy in our current role, or we thought the next job was much, much better than our current role. If it was only 2% better, we're probably not going to risk it. So 5% might be really high for an accounting firm. So you have to have some way of judging whether it's good or bad. So opportunities and threats. So this will give us ideas about what's happening in the environment that could help or hurt us. Organization's response to those would determine its success, right? So artificial intelligence. What we're going to do about that? Are we going to ignore it? Are we going to try and incorporate it into our business? Where will we do it? Will it just be customer service? Do we do it now, or do we wait and see if it gets better? These are all things that I think that the landscape of the organizations out there is probably going to change. It's going to have quite a drastic impact. So models that can help us achieve this. So Porter's 5 forces allows us to monitor our industry. Pestel, a bit wider, so that's about the macroeconomic environment. And then the BCG matrix. So looking at our product portfolio and how well it's spread out. So you've got your stars and your question marks and your cash cows. And so if you only have cash cows, I mean, that's great, but every cash cow will eventually become a dog. So you need to have some stars, some question marks coming through. They're going to be your future cash cows. So those would be a good way of thinking about how we could respond. Okay, so we're going to have a look at Porter's generic strategies next. So there's 3 ways of getting a competitive advantage. And these are good things to keep in mind when you're reading a scenario in the exam. Try to identify whether which of these 3 strategies they're following. They say 3. Really, there's 2 basic ones that, like in the exam, they'll either be a cost leader or they'll be differentiated. So we've got cost leader, so trying to have the lowest price, lowest cost price. Differentiator, so trying to do things a bit different. Normally, it would just try to offer the highest quality in the exam, keep it simple. And then focus is the 3rd. So we're only going to go after one segment of the market. So you could say like Rolls-Royce, for example, is differentiated focus. So, and the way you can identify this is like, I've never seen an advert for a Rolls-Royce. So I guess I'm not their target market. I'm not the niche they're going after. So they go after a specific part of the market with a differentiated product. Cost focus, so like TUI, I'm just going to think of TUI, that's a holiday company in the UK, so they do cheap holiday packages. If I wanted to get on a TUI flight just to fly to London or something like that, or a flight to Spain, I couldn't actually do that. They only want to go after holiday makers, so they're only going after a single segment of the market, and they do that with a cost-effective option. I don't like to say cheap, maybe is the wrong word, so cost-effective. So those are the ways we can compete. So cost leadership, so having lower cost than all the other competitors in the market. There can only be one cost leader, I guess, if we're using the word leader. Low cost means can sell at lower price, low profit margin, but a high volume of sales. So that's one of the strategies, is to stack them high, sell them cheap. So it works only when you've got a large amount of volume going through. Likely to be the lowest price competitor, but not necessarily the case. Requires strong cost control, efficient processes, economies of scale, innovation and planning to retain cost leadership status. Right, so if we think about this from an advanced performance management point of view, right, so performance management, you're going to measure, you're going to compare, and you're going to control. Right, so what am I going to measure? I'm going to measure cost, right, unit cost. I'm going to measure how efficient my processes are. So I'm going to measure the output per input. I'm going to measure waste, economies of scale. So this one, I might look at bargaining power I have with my suppliers. So because I'm so big, do I get good discounts from them? And then innovation and planning. So how many efficiency measures was I able to implement this year, or how much was I able to cut my costs this year from new ideas? So we've got cost-focused measures. We're going to compare to our other cost leaders, other people that are in the cheaper end of the market. There's no point in, say, Lidl, which is a cheap supermarket, comparing themselves to Waitrose, which is an expensive supermarket. And the actions I'm going to take are going to be focused on decreasing the cost or increasing efficiency. It's not necessarily going to be focusing on getting better quality or improving my customer experience and things like that. Not saying that we won't do any of those things. Just because a supermarket is cheap doesn't mean that you'd walk in if it was cold. Because there's a limit. It's just what our customers choose to prioritize. Our customers are prioritizing a cheap price. But they won't accept really poor customer service and really poor conditions and really poor quality. It's just what we're choosing to prioritize. So my actions will prioritize cutting the costs or increasing efficiency. Differentiation then. So I want to create the perception that our product or service is better. I like that, create the perception, not necessarily the reality. If they are valued by customers, they can charge a higher price. Focus on innovation, quality, and offering a premium product or service. Investing in processes, staff development, and training. Cost control is still important. So I think that's coming back to that point I was making, that these are all the focus of the actions. So like a differentiator, you're going to measure. I'll probably measure like brand awareness, value perception, customer service, customer satisfaction, with surveys and things like that, and not necessarily, cost specific stuff, all, more non-financial stuff, if anything. Then I'm going to compare myself to other differentiated companies to understand whether I'm doing well or not. And then all my actions, these are things my actions will focus on. So innovation, improving quality, offering a premium product or service, improving my staff training, improving the customer experience. Those are what I would spend money and actions on. as it says there, cost control is still important. So they're all the priorities. I'm not going to go out and spend £1 billion doing it. There's a balance to be struck. It's just I'm going to prioritize those things. Okay, and then focus. So target only one segment of the market. So it could be a geographical area. It could be a specific type of customer. It might be a niche in the market. So like holiday makers. Within the segments, we'll compete on cost or differentiation. The focus one, I don't see it coming up very often. The two big ones, cost leader and differentiation. And like I said, when you're reading a scenario, a really good thing to look out for is whether they're cost leader or differentiated. They won't say specifically, but there'll be some words in there that will hint. So like if they use the word luxury, then they're probably hinting at differentiated. If they use the word being efficient or having a competitive price, then they're probably more of a cost leader. So how do we use these? So successful organizations create a value proposition. So operational efficiency. So that would be, sounds like cost leader. Or strategic positioning. So that sounds differentiated. So positioning myself in the market. So I always think like a good example of this would be the supermarkets, right? So you've got your expensive supermarkets like Waitrose and M&S, and then you have your cheap ones. So people think Lidl and Aldi, and then you have like the in between people like Tesco's and Asda. And you think, wait a minute, so they're not the best like Waitrose. They're not the cheapest like say Lidl. They're in the middle. So, but they position themselves there because there's like quite a wide range of quite a wide pool of customers. Everyone needs to go to the supermarket, right? Everybody needs food. And the way they position themselves there is by convenience. So they're still cheap, but they're also convenient. They're not as cheap as Lidl, but if you go to Tesco's, you can buy like everything. You can buy toys and clothes and mobile phones and TV screens, as well as all your shopping as well. And they tend to offer like quite a wide range of choices. So that would be the positioning thing. Where are you in the market? This results in sustained competitive advantage. So either way, you can get a sustained competitive advantage. There's not one that's necessarily better than the other. If the organization tries to do both, you become stuck in the middle. So if you try and be the cheapest and the best, then customers don't know what you stand for, because we all know you cannot be the cheapest and the best. That's what happened to some famous British brands, like British Home Stores is the one that I think of now. So BHS. So it started out British Home Stores. They did home furnishings, couches and dining tables and things like that. And they offered really nice stuff, very good quality stuff. And then they decided to start selling clothes. And I think they tried to compete with like Primark and H&M, and so they're at the cheaper end of the market, and they got to the point where customers are like, well, I don't know, are you quality or are you cheap? Because you've got quality furniture but cheap clothes, and so if I'm not getting the best price or the best quality, I don't want to shop there. Like, I'm confused. So we call that stuck in the middle. So the overall strategy and all strategic decisions must be consistent with the generic strategy chosen. Yeah, so if you want to be cheap, make everything cheap or efficient. If you want to be different, you want to be quality, make everything quality.